Hello there folks, welcome to my channel. This is Ferengi on board here, discussing on a topic regarding motivation this time, since this channel will provide people with some of the wisdom that I have acquired on spirituality, introspection, video game analysis from time to time, playing video games and having fun, as well as game design, and probably the most rare, the development of my own game that I'm working on in RPG Maker platform. And for today I chose to discuss about motivation. Now, whatever I speak about in my videos, I prefer being as neutral as possible, and therefore I prefer reminding people not to take whatever I say for granted and take it with a grain of salt, because everyone came here to experience their own truths, not the truths of others. So just taking into account what others say without thinking about it and feeling anything towards it, whether you feel it's okay with you or, well, probably it's not okay with you. This is something that people should try to avoid as much as possible. The idea of not taking things, for a better analysis and just accept them the way they are. Now, I made a previous video on motivation and why it's a bust, more or less, and I want to continue today with a video in which I present the idea why motivation will never help you, or will rarely help you, and why you'll probably dump a lot of money into motivation and most likely will not end up with too many results. Now, most people will probably define motivation in any way, sort, shape or form. Now, in my case, I'm kind of a person that has been ever since I was young. I kind of called myself as suffering from concept aversion. Namely, I simply cannot embrace concepts. I simply prefer ignoring them, and actually not ignoring them, but simply disallowing them from making me become chained to them. Practically, I don't feel I need, and I really don't need, and nor do I welcome concepts into my mind. That includes the idea of words and phrases and structures, because in the end, speaking is something that I use only to try to make myself understood, because it's not necessarily that you can be a good speaker. If people simply cannot understand what you put out, then you have to find an audience that will definitely understand, and I seek an audience that is highly introspective when it comes to my videos, because when I present things about the wisdom that I acquired from different sources I heard, read, listened to, etc., I'd rather speak things and point them out in a certain way that will also have people try to ask themselves some questions at least, and that instead of just providing some plain answers. Okay, like I can do that, and certainly I did this, but I also prefer challenging people's imagination and understanding that that is a powerful tool to use, because life is not necessarily what is given to you initially. There are always different senses to that. And motivation is something that most people will define in whatever shape or form. It's simply something that I do not need definition for, let's say. I don't need concepts to live, because I can simply accept everything around me the way they are without much judgment. So I don't need to watch trees or whatever and also think that they are only that and they cannot be anything else. Okay, now motivation is something that a lot of people are now speaking about. So many people are building a lot of those motivational music, motivational stuff on YouTube and on other platforms like Spotify. The point about that is, well, I can't say I view that as an effort that will only pay off to the creators, but not necessarily to the people who would enjoy those, because the point about the lack of this so-called construct named motivation is that, well, when it is missing from you, it's not that motivation is missing. Motivation, in as of what I feel, motivation simply does not exist. Okay, if I were to give a definition, let's say, in human words, my definition would sound something like this. So, what people usually manifest or uh, present through the idea of motivation is the lack of will to do something, with also the beautiful lies to support that. So let me repeat it again. Motivation, as of what I see, is the lack of will to do things, anything, and also the beautiful lies that support it. Okay, so now what do I actually mean with this? Now we all know that we humans are very good experts when it comes to lying ourselves and finding excuses and the such. And motivation has become one of the most beautiful lies because so many people say, I don't have the motivation to do that, but there is no such thing as motivation. This is just a construct that people have created as an excuse to not do a certain thing. When the choice arrives to do something, there is just that simple choice. You either do it or you don't do it. Not doing something is still a choice because not doing something means that you chose not to do. Okay, it's a conscious choice not to do something. So motivation is not something that you simply lack. Ever since I was young, I had this feeling that I lacked motivation, and looking around I felt like I never wanted, or I felt like I couldn't simply do like literally anything. And looking at people, how they react, how they act, like I always felt like the odd one. And well, I've been through like 3 kindergartens, 2 elementary schools, 2 secondary schools, and 2 high schools. And in one of the high schools, actually, I went from one class to another, and then 2 different faculties, although I flunked the first one, and then to a master degree. I've been through a lot of collectives of people, and I've got to compare myself so many times, and I always seemed and felt like the odd one doing different things like drawing or writing different books or minding my own business while others would just speak and do certain things that, well, even to me back then they felt somewhat normal, but I simply felt I had no attraction towards that and towards any of those people nonetheless. Okay, more or less. Like, yeah, sure, there were some, sexual attractions, like I really liked some girls, but I could feel that that liking was nothing else than, just a sexual appeal, that I liked how they looked, and kind of nothing else because I was way too young back then to understand, more complex things beyond these simple temptations, let's say. So I would always accuse myself of, not having motivation to do things because in my mind I thought that I was unable to do the things that other people would do, and that's why ask, I would consider myself as, inferior to them and unable to do anything, but at the same time I was actually doing my own things. I was actually learning good. I actually had good grades and good results. So the point about that was whatever I was doing, I was actually doing somewhat more than the others. What most would do is the typical things like gossiping and speaking with others, while I just preferred creating and, diving into different aspects of myself and exploring the corners of myself instead of just, speaking things that kind of never had any influence to me. And to give you a further impression, when I was in the seventh grade, I was asked what kind of music I liked, but I didn't even know then that there were some kinds of music. Like I knew about music and mostly commercial one, which I also wasn't fussing about too much. And there were a few songs that I liked earlier, but as time went on, like to that question, I answered that I liked rock music because that was basically the only genre of music that I knew. Like simply, simply the words like jazz and other things would not come to my mind, not because I think I actually knew them back then, even back then, but they were simply so irrelevant to me, they were like inexistent to my mind. So this lack of motivation, I've spent so long of my life, more than half of my life, trying to find out what that is and why I am actually so incompatible with that. Because whenever I looked at people, like I asked them, how did you do that? How could you manage to do that? Because for a long time I had a lot of depression, and I had a lot of feelings that I didn't belong here, I didn't like this world, and I wouldn't do, and I didn't actually like and enjoy anything in here. So people would just respond to my question on how they did certain things by just I had the motivation to do that. So again, it was nothing else than what I heard it's called confirmation bias. Every time you hear something, every time you accept something, then a part of your brain, a specialized type of neurons, will always seek to bring to your mind, to your awareness, okay, to your conscious awareness, literally everything that supports the ideas you believe in. So, with this aspect in mind, that part of your brain is actually the part that specifically wants stability. It wants things to be under control. It wants comfort. It craves comfort, and to most people it's actually the level where they live, because most people will probably understand, but they won't want to embrace the fact that if you want more freedom in your life, you actually have to work a lot for that, instead of just doing simple things and hiding behind the principle of comfort. Okay, now motivation in my sense is something that really doesn't exist, although there are, yes, many people might argue that there are a lot of those motivational programs and the such. Now the way I see many of those, I won't generalize now to say all, but the way I feel about those, at least of, let's say, my level of awareness and the wisdom I have acquired, is that those things are only good for people who don't do anything and don't have anything to do with their lives. Now why do I say this is very simple. If a person doesn't have a purpose in their life, they won't have anything important to do with their life, so they will just follow routines, like a job they don't like, waking up, doing the shopping, doing some cooking, and then going to bed so that the next day they could rinse and repeat. And this way, people straying as much as possible from their authenticity, they start becoming more and more depressed, because depression means nothing else than running away from your own authenticity, and well, the punishment for that is suffering. Because if you're not authentic, well, you are bound to suffer. Again, this is not something that I say because I want people to suffer. It's because that's how the universe works. Look around you and see whatever people who you consider as authentic, who of those are actually truly really happy, because you'll see a lot of people on social media and in reality around you prancing with different aspects that they theoretically have, with the life that's so perfect for them and that they're so happy, with females and males that come with their so-called spouse and they say, oh my god, our relationship is so awesome. But if you look better at them, you'll most likely realize that they simply are not true. Okay, you'll simply see the lie, because well, real eyes can easily see real lies. Now, I'm not calling people who create motivational videos as liars, but to a certain extent I feel that that is just a like a little cheat on how to get money fast, because there is no such thing as a motivation. There is just people who don't have any purpose in life, and when you don't have anything to do in life, you simply do not live your life, because you are not serving any purpose that is yours. You are just serving other people's services, okay, other people's purposes, and well, you are just helping other people's dream or dreams become true. Now, I'm not saying that working a job is something bad, everyone needs the money, but there is so much more one can do beyond the job like, finding some hobbies, finding some things that remind you that you're actually alive, instead of just doing everything for everyone else but no one gives a damn about you, because society is sick and that's how it actually works. So motivation is something that most people fuss about because it's technically what they expect. Okay, many people, when they end up victimizing and considering that their life is shit, and we can actually hear so many of these in video games, crybabies as I call them, trolls and whatever, on different posts on the internet, on social media, the way they act is, well, as victimizing. And when people victimize, what they actually put out, if you seek the truth beyond the words and the fuss that they make, is that they simply expect someone to come magically in their life and simply solve their problems. That is why there are so many people in this world that end up as people pleasers. And the fate of a people pleaser is to become somewhat of a master, or let's call them mistress, because some people might say that I don't like social justice and masculine and feminine words, although I simply cannot care about those are just distractions that people, again, without any serious purpose in their life, get stuck to, because if you have a purpose to follow in your life, you know that if that purpose can impact people and you can actually provide 1 million people, let's say, with value, instead of seeking how to make $1 million, then you simply know that you have a greater purpose. And when it comes to impacting a great number of people, well, then you will know that your time and your resources are very important. And just a reminder, like, life is a third of it you kind of sleep it, because technically we need 8 hours to sleep. Now 8 hours we need because we don't treat our bodies the way we should. We eat much more than we should. And, well, let's say that the common folk actually sleep 8 hours a day, which technically translates as you're sleeping a third of your life. And life is a marvelous gift that, well, no one else can simply enjoy it. Okay, no one else can simply enjoy if, well, they are dead. Okay, like, you come in this world, you live in this body, and at a certain time, this loan that you took from this world, because your body came from somewhere, right? It came from the matter that this planet houses, and later on you will simply part ways with this matter, which shall be returned to this mother planet. Be it that the body is burnt, the ashes will still remain on this planet, and, well, if you take that on different planets, I don't think the planet will actually mind. But poetically speaking, everyone kind of gets a piece of this planet and eventually ends up giving it back. So the point about motivation is that people who seek motivation suffer from the illusion that while they hear that motivation, they feel compelled to do something, but it's just a distraction. They finally feel that they're doing something else than the typical thing. Okay, it's like a drug. It becomes like a drug because people who are stuck in routines, they can barely wait to do something completely different. That is why yoga, for example, also works to most people, and many people claim they feel different, even if the only thing they do is some kind of, moving their arms and staying in a certain position, because most people simply cannot meditate, because they cannot still their minds. And, well, stilling your mind is a bit more different than just not thinking at anything. It means becoming one and the same with each and every one of your thoughts, and accepting the role of a observer instead of reacting to each and every thought that crosses your mind. Now the point about motivation is it becomes as what I call a drug activity, or something that people use to run away from different things, to run away from different manifestations or parts of their life that they really hate. So that is why motivation and yoga sound as so good for other people, and that is why so many people actually feel so, let's say, actually good. It's because they are finally doing something different than their routines. But you will see that most people simply cannot follow this because the problem is they will start treating this as a routine as well, and the brain simply cannot function on routines because whatever is repeatable, whatever is repeated, simply pisses the brain off. Now, not in all cases, but there is a reason why, for example, working as a cashier at a supermarket, for example, is classified as a very mind destructive job. Okay, it is indeed, because many people will say, but it's freaking easy. You just take the products and you like mark them on the laser, right, and then you give them to the client, right? But that repetitive action of always taking the products from your right to the left, that is actually what breaks your mind in time, and that is one of the reasons why many people simply don't cope with that. If you don't believe me, I recommend you the movie New Times, or I don't know exactly the name of it in English, but it's a movie made by Charlie Chaplin in which he works in an industrial factory, always doing the same thing for 8 hours. Okay, back then on assembly lines, people didn't know how to assemble, let's say, a car engine. They only knew how to assemble a certain part of it, like a screw, or I don't know, two pieces together, because they would have to work in mass. And as they worked in mass, they only had to put one screw over the correct place, and then the next piece would come and they had to rush for that, because the band would simply keep moving, and they had to make sure they didn't remain behind with the schedule. Okay, and doing that 8 hours a day, okay, screwing that little thing in the correct location, I assure you that's the best and fastest ticket you can have to the psychiatry world. And that's kind of the same thing with motivation. When motivation occurs, okay, many people are finally listening to something that's different, that's giving them a sense of purpose. And I repeat, it is a sense of purpose. As I said, it is the lack of will to do something, because when there is something to be done, you either do it or you don't do it. There is no such thing as something that will push you from behind to do it. You either accept to do it or you run away from the responsibility. And running away from the responsibility usually comes with the pains of depression and, well, feeling bad that you could have done something. Most people unfortunately live their lives in this way, and to their worst nightmare, the greatest hell for a person may actually happen in their life. And it is said that the greatest hell for any person is meeting that one person you could have become, but for whatever reason you chose not to become, because, well, you preferred inhibiting yourself and lying yourself that you don't have the focus, you don't have the motivation. These are just little lies and programmings that you are repeating to yourself because you're simply running away from the fact of doing a certain thing. So motivation, as of this standpoint, is something that is, as a mentor of mine said, it's nothing else than mental masturbation. Okay, you're having the impression that you're having a goal, you're having the illusion, the impression, you're feeling like you're actually doing something, but it's exactly the same thing as being an observer, because you're still an observer. You're not doing necessarily what you should, and even if you're doing what you should, your mind is not totally focused on that, so your results may not necessarily be as good. And afterwards you may probably fail, or most likely your egotistical mind will say it's never enough, and you will want to go to more motivation because you will simply want to run away and shun those things, okay, those thoughts. And again, motivation becomes a repetitive cycle, and people will become more and more addicted to motivation. And that is why there are, well, not necessarily the only reason, but that is one of the reasons why so many people prosper, because they create all these programs that they themselves have the impression that help other people, but in the end people just refuse or simply cannot see things or easily see things the way they are. If you tell people that motivation is a bust, it's like telling someone the cigars they are smoking are bad for themselves. Hell no, they won't accept that. They will even die smoking because it's the comfort that they have settled in. And with people who accept motivation as their comfort zone, well, guess what? They will become addicted to it and they will consume it just like, people addicted to drugs consume drugs. Is listening to motivation something bad? Well, I cannot accuse motivation and people creating motivational music and speeches to I cannot accuse this of being bad. Okay, it's just the way people react to it that make it somewhat bad. Okay, let's not forget that motivation has always existed. Okay, there has always existed motivation behind each and every great historical event, for example, right? There had to be a great leader that inspired the hearts of their warriors, okay, their followers, to simply commit to an action that most likely will result in their destruction. Okay, because when you would go to a war, even then at those times, and especially nowadays with what technology we have in terms of mass destruction, it's like every day you will end up as a soldier. Okay, someone who has been you know someone who has truly been on the battlefront. Okay, you're gonna end up cherishing life like no one else. Okay, because army, okay, serving the army but actually going on the battlefront, okay, is probably the only thing in this world that can actually shape you in such a way that you will end up sooner or later cherishing life and literally everything around you, because you will meet people who will sacrifice for you, or let's skip the situation in which you sacrifice yourself for others and you die, because once you have survived the war, when you come back home you're technically a ruin. Okay, that is a reason why most veterans find it hard, because you don't necessarily have to stay 10 hours and fight a war. Okay, it's the amount of battles that you go through that play in the amount, yes, so the amount of battles that plays an impact on you, because you could stay only 1 month on the battlefront, but if you have a fight that is that long, okay, you can actually experience so many things. If you're just a soldier in a different country but you don't get to fight that much in different wars, well, happy you, I could say, and lucky you, but each and every fight has to be taken into account that it may actually be your last. Just like each and every day, it's technically nothing else than a possibility, a larger or a smaller possibility, that it may end up as being your last. So actually going to war, that needs a lot of courage. I wouldn't say it actually needs motivation, because as of what I felt, motivation kind of feels like a bust to me. It's not something that is of great importance. As I said, you either do something or you either don't do it. Okay, because I prefer being a bit stricter, and I prefer giving people what they need instead of what they want. Okay, because when you have people that sugarcoat you, that is nothing else than aligning yourself even more with your comfort zone. When you have people that actually remind you that your situation sucks because probably you don't want to accept it, or probably you're not aware enough of that yet, that is a very good thing, because it means that those people care for you. Now most people end up thinking that they don't care about me because all they do is that they accuse me of not doing things, but that's when people actually care about you, because people who truly care about you, they want to see you win, but at the same time they know they have their own purpose, so they can't simply stay after your butt so that you do your own things. Okay, it's either you do your own things just like they do, or they will simply ditch you, because people who want to fulfill their dreams and their life purpose are most likely those who will become successful, especially if their dreams are accompanied by a lot of work. And it doesn't have to be like 15 hours a day. This is something that you have to understand, and you have to commit to in your own way. So motivation is something that it is not bad. It is a good way to embrace yourself even more. But I would rather use motivational music and speeches when it comes to meditation and kind of guided meditations, something like that. Other than that, they are also very good in the morning when you wake up or before you go to bed, as again, affirmations, daily affirmations to change your beliefs about yourself and the world. That is what I see motivation as. But using it as a drug activity to run away from activities, well, that's something that I'd call a bust. That's what I would call time spent unproductively, okay? So I'm gonna wrap this video here. I presented my point on motivation on a previous video. Be sure to watch it, click my account name and you'll see the list of my videos. I'm posting, well, almost daily, at times even more times during the same day. Feel happy about life, embrace yourselves more. You are loved and appreciated, and remember, take care of yourselves and the others. Become more introspective and realize that the truths that you have been looking for have always been within you. These being said, you are loved and appreciated. Whatever you are doing is the best you can at the right pace for you. Okay? Feel free to like and subscribe if you like this type of content. Feel free to write in the comments if you want more of this. Feel free to post your questions and I may as well actually create some videos on that. I, as a speaker, prefer being also audience driven. If people have some questions, I don't feel bad about letting them ask me, and I can simply let them guide the discussion through their questions, and I can provide some answers based on the wisdom I have acquired, while also admitting that I'm not afraid of saying I don't know. You'll probably hear me, especially when I play video games, you'll probably hear me, I don't know, saying I don't know, but if you, especially if you meet me in real life or if you get to speak to me, you will most likely hear me a lot saying I don't know, and it's not because I may not know the situation, but I simply cannot accept the idea that, hey, I know literally everything. That's the unsuccessful type of people. Okay, that's the poor people, the people who lack motivation. All this being said, have fun, enjoy life, become more introspective. You are loved and appreciated. Ferengi on board, signing out.